Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I am your host Ren, and today we continue with the Belmont Saga, Part 3, Chapter 7, Lady Alesta. So, last week, using the various parts scavenged from the dead robotic body of Innocent Drury, Tara rigs up a little viewing screen where they can see through the numerous and sundry illusions of the Cronins, and they see a vast and rather scary asteroid field developing all around them, where none of this is marked on any chart, is completely invisible to their eye. They just see empty space. But there is a massive asteroid field with a fairly large oblong world in the center of it. A gray world covered in a thick atmosphere, covered with a shallow sea, generating warmth and teeming with life, which is kind of a contradiction, as way out here in the wildlands, far away from Beta Terrigen, Canis star, and Onaris' star, and I cannot remember my own designations. I'd have to look it up in my big stack of stuff. I'm not going to do that right now because it's 1 a.m. Should be pretty frozen solid, but it's not. It's generating heat from within, possibly from tidal forces or some sort of technology, maybe, that's heating this planet up. Anyways, as they approach, a significant conundrum comes into the light, as they say, okay, there's Cronin World, and according to Tara's little rig up, the Demophalon John and Lieutenant Gwendolyn with her crew is on that world. So how are they going to get to them? They're in the Seeker, which is extremely compromised. They don't have gas compression engines, which are basically jet engines that they use when they're flying within the atmosphere. So the Seeker would just drop like a stone if they entered the atmosphere. Their Westminster drive engine that they're using to attack scout ship, while creating plenty of thrust, it would not generate enough thrust to propel them. And also they're flying backwards, so aerodynamically the Seeker would just drop like a stone into the sea. And then what? And then Stenstrom says, well, let's uncouple the Westminster and take the Westminster down, leave the Seeker in orbit. That sounds like a good idea, but attack scout ships aren't designed for water operations. Where are they going to land? They can't put down in the water. They'll sink. The engines of the Westminster aren't designed for water operations. So they're like, oh, great, now we're good and stuffed, aren't we? Then Stenstrom begins to feel incredibly fatigued. So much so he excuses himself just to go into his office to maybe splash some water on his face or something. Then he passes out and he has a dream of his home in Tyrol by the sea, and he sees what he thinks is his sister Virginia, and she's crying. And it's not Virginia, it is a manifestation of the Star of Merian, whatever that happens to be. And the star is beside itself, weeping for its lost children that were murdered by the Drurys. And then she asks Stenstrom, power down your ship. I will send you my road, and I beg you, save my children. And Stenstrom wakes back up, and he agrees. He tells everyone, let's get everything powered off. Tara protests, because it took her a while to get this stuff going in the first place. And they also have a contact coming up from Cronin World. It looks like our friends, the Drurys, are heading in for round 2 of fun in space. Stenstrom says, forget the Drurys, power everything off. They do. The Marian's road comes for them, a big wall of fog with a gleaming star at the end. And that's where we left off, and that's where we're going to begin this week. Part 3, Chapter 7, Lady Alesta. So, anyways, let's proceed immediately. In an instant, they emerged from the fog. They were no longer on the Seeker. They were standing in a small, irregularly shaped corridor of sweaty black metal, with barely enough room for the 3 of them and almost no light. A fierce wind roared past them. Stenstrom and Aram had to hold onto their hats, and Tara's sideburns took flight. They looked around. They appeared to be alone, so they put their weapons away. "Where are we?" Tara said, having to shout to be heard above the roaring wind. "Looks to be an air shaft of some sort," Aram replied. "What? An air duct." Stenstrom produced 3 yellow holy stones and passed them out. and the corridor lit up in soft light. "How do we get here?" Aram yelled. "The Merian's road. Don't ask me how, because I don't know. I had a dream, and I was told the road would come for us," Stenstrom said. "How are we going to get back?" "Same way we got in, I suppose." Getting their bearings, they found themselves in a long shaft that went on for as far as they could determine. Above them was a cut stone ceiling. Below was a metal grating that led down into darkness. Only about 6 feet high, Stenstrom had to stoop, but Tara and Aram could stand erect. They made their way down the shaft, trying to find a way out. Aram concentrated on the grating, waving his holy stone over it, trying to see within. "I think these grates service the chambers below us with fresh air. It doesn't smell all that fresh to me," Tara called out, noting the slight, briny smell to the rushing air. Aram knelt down low and inspected the grates, holding his light close. He stopped. Hey, I think I hear something coming from this one." Stenstrom and Tara made their way to his side. They leaned down and strained to hear, and sure enough, there was the faint sound of many people rustling about, barely audible over the fast-moving air. Stenstrom and Tara tried to create a windbreak with their bodies as Aram struggled to listen. "What do you hear?" Tara demanded. "Shh!" He put his ear against the grating. I hear many people. They sound frightened. It must be Captain Gwendolyn and her crew." He tapped on the grate with Tara's monica, making a sharp tick-tick-tick sound. Aram took his hat off and leaned down against the grate as far as he could. "Hello?" he said. "Is anyone down there?" There was movement from below. A pale face emerged through the grate at the end of a short shaft. It was a small woman, the hole just big enough for her head and one shoulder. There were hints of hands behind her neck and shoulder as if she were being hoisted up. Who's there?" she whispered. "Are you part of Captain Gwendolyn's crew?" The woman squinted to see. "No, but I think she's here. There are so many." What is your name, my lady?" Aram asked. "Alesta. My name is Alesta." Aram reached through the grate and stretched, taking her warm hand. "My name is Josephus, Lord of Aram. Call me Aram. Can you help us? Aram? Can you help us, please? We're trying." The woman squirmed into the vent. Aram got a better look at her. Pale skin, thick black hair, blue eyes, hints of a green robe. Aram gasped. "You! It's you!" he cried. She looked up at him. Pardon? I've seen you, standing on our ship through the lantern," Aram said, with excitement. Pardon? She said again. I don't understand." Stenstrom and Tara moved down the shaft looking for a larger opening. I've been looking for you," Aram said. Alesta, what a beautiful name." Despite the situation, Alesta smiled. "Well, sir, here I am." There was a clank from below. "All right, you scum! Come here!" came a surly voice through the grate. Alesta appeared panicked. Aram, they're here! They're here!" She was pulled back down through the hole. She tried to hold on to Aram's hand, but lost her grip and vanished. "Belle!" Aram cried. "Did you see? It's her! From the lantern! She's here! She needs us immediately!" They checked the grate. It was too small for them to go through it. "There must be another way down," Stenstrom said. "Keep looking." Tara wandered down the corridor a little. She knelt down and became interested in a small chute. "I think we can go this way." Aram handed her monica back and she used it to pry open the grate. Before anyone could stop her, Tara climbed in and quickly disappeared. Aram hauled himself into the chute and followed. Stenstrom trailed. There was a 3-foot by 3-foot tube that led off at a sharp downward angle and then bent away out of sight. Stenstrom slid down and struggled into the bend. Ahead, he could see 2 pools of light from Tara and Aram's holy stone. Stenstrom caught up. They were huddled around a small grate. A light came up strongly from it. "I think we should go down there," Tara said. Looks like a long drop, though. They pried the grate up and out of the way, and Stenstrom stuck his head down to get a better look. Upside down, Stenstrom saw empty glass-like coffins lined up against a stony wall, stretching off for as far as he could see, like a line of transparent teeth. "Is there anybody out there?" Tara asked. "Not that I see." "How far down is it?" "About 15 feet. Stenstrom lowered himself out of the grate and dropped down. He landed on his heels, and the fall hurt him a lot, more than he would have figured. He stood there, smarting. Odd. Innocent Drury could punch him into a metal wall and he didn't feel a thing, but take a 15-foot fall and he nearly broke his ankle and fell on his duff. Everything stung. Come down, you two. I'll catch you," he said, a little unsteady. Aram carefully lowered himself out, his small legs and buckle shoes flailing. He let go, and Stenstrom caught him without too much trouble. Tara then launched herself out of the grate and slammed into Stenstrom, knocking him down. "Oh, that was cool," she said, picking herself up. "Yeah," he replied, feeling his aching ribs. Tara was flush with excitement. She punched him in the arm, getting him in the nerve cluster between the muscles. "Ow!" Stenstrom cried. She was perplexed. "What's wrong with you? Why did that hurt?" "I don't know. I don't seem to have it right now. I'm just flesh and blood at the moment." "The sister's power?" "Apparently it's gone." "Well, that's fine timing." Aram looked around. "What in the name of creation is this?" "This, I think, according to league conjecture, is where the Kestrels created Kalanju. I recall Captain Davidge and Countess Sigillis describing it in detail. Looks just like how they described it. They called it a tank." Tara shuddered. "Kalanju? You mean those creepy people with no skin I've heard about?" "Yes. They're placed into these glass containers and soaked in some sort of corrosive fluid until they go mad." Aram was anxious. Well, then we've no time to lose. We must locate the crew at once. And Lady Alesta, she's out here somewhere. Did you see her, Belle? It's her!" he repeated with excitement. They moved down the corridor, passing coffin after coffin. "Tara, do you have any impressions?" She thought a moment. "I want to say we need to go in that direction," she said, pointing to her right. "We need to wait, though." "We've no time, Tara," Aram protested. "Alesta!" No, Rami, we need to wait. If we don't, we'll have a lot of trouble. I feel it. If we're assuming the Drurys are stuffing the crew into these coffins down there somewhere, then we need to let them finish and retire. The very size of this place will work against them. We're going to have a lot of scared and hurt people on our hands, and we need to remain undetected for as long as possible. I don't see the Drurys moving around in this area much. Then we'll have time to free the crew and come up with a plan. How in the name of creation are we going to get out of here, anyway? "Well, we'll figure that out when we get to it, I suppose," Stenstrom replied. They moved to the side of the corridor near the coffins and hid themselves as best they could. They seemed to wait for a long time. How much longer?" Aram cried, impatient. Tara looked around. "Oh, okay. Let's go, that way. Make sure we stay quiet." Silently, they moved down the corridor, all three of them amazed at how long the corridor was. Eventually, they heard something in the near distance. They heard a muffled moaning. Aram shot forward, Stenstrom and Tara following. Ahead, the line of coffins in this area appeared to be full. Indistinct bodies stood inside, pounding on the glass. Muffled cries barely heard. Stenstrom knew from the recollections of Captain Davidge what was going to happen. He could see the coffins were partially full with brown liquid soaking the occupants. The pain. Captain Davidge described the agony the occupants felt. We've got to get these people out of there now," he said. Tara and Aram selected an occupied coffin and tried to open it. The doors are locked," Tara cried. She drew her SK, silenced the muzzle, and tried to carefully shoot the lock off. Foot! Her slug bounced off and ricocheted about, Aram having to duck. Stenstrom strode up to the door and tried to pull it open. He expected it to easily open. He should be able to smash this enclosure to bits, but nothing happened. The surface of the door wouldn't budge. It didn't even bend. He tried again. Still nothing happened. The lid of the coffin looked like nothing more than frosted glass, but it was diamond-like in its hardness. Still, he'd been able to smash through Duraplate like spun sugar and break Innocent Drury's robotic neck like a rotten egg. He recalled hurting himself jumping out of the grate. He suddenly had a thought. Tara, how far down are we right now? Over a mile, Belle, I'm sure of it. Probably a lot more than that. Over a mile. Could it be that entombed in this kestrel tank, the sister's light from Camelopardalis couldn't reach? Belle, this coffin's starting to fill with something. The person within began a muffled scream. Small fists pounded on the interior. Tara backed away. There's got to be a central control panel or something around here. She turned and ran down the hall, past the coffins, her coattails flying and boots churning. Stenstrom strained again to pull the lid open. Nothing. He was no stronger than he ordinarily would be. So, here, deep in the kestrel's horrid tank, he was no fist, no it-man, no lone rider. Here he was just a man, with naught available to him but his wits and his skills. He couldn't help but be disappointed. But Belle, what are we going to do? Aram asked, frantic. The person's muffled screams became slightly louder. Aram! Aram! Aram was horrified. Alesta? Alesta! He pounded on the door. Stenstrom looked at the sophisticated lock for a moment. I think it's a composite lock of some kind. He shook his hand and produced a grim-toothed pick. With a skittery click, he began working the lock. Belle, hurry! Aram looked down the corridor. Tara, get back here! I'm trying to figure out how to open these things, she shouted back. Hello, what's this? She shuttled into an alcove. Stenstrom drowned all the noise out. He put his mind elsewhere, back in the hidden culvert with his mother and his two sisters years ago. He recalled the years of hard training, his mother's harsh evaluations and critical eye always present. He could hear her words in his head. No lock shall hold you or keep you out. Then he could feel it. He didn't hear anything, as this lock had a magnetic mechanism, but he imagined the sound in his head. Click. The lid came free and they pulled it open. Lady Alesta fell out, her feet and the front of her clothes covered in a noisome brown fluid. Stenstrom noted her garb. White and green robes, beads, shoeless, lots of hair. Aram was correct. She was the same Pilgrim of Merian they'd seen on the ship. The apparition was now real. Here she was. Get her cleaned off, Aram. That's important. This fluid is highly caustic. I'm moving on to the next one. Aram produced a number of small handkerchiefs from his inner coat, and Stenstrom took several. As Stenstrom ran to the next coffin, he caught a glimpse of Aram holding the crying Alesta to him out of the corner of his eye, whispering into her ear. It's not a good time for that, Aram, he thought. Not a good time at all. He worked the lock of the coffin, becoming familiar with its complex mechanisms. He had another one open, and then another one. A Merian female and a male crewman from the Demophalon John came spilling out. He put his curiosity out of his mind. What are Pilgrims of Merian doing here in a bloody kestrel tank? As he moved on to the next coffin, he was about to yell at Aram to get to the fallen and start cleaning them off, but he was already doing so, and so was Alesta, apparently recovered somewhat and helping as best she could. Hey! Tara's voice echoed from down the hall. I think I've got it! I think I've got it knocked! Before another moment had passed, all the coffins down the line opened, spilling out their living and caustic contents. As quickly as he could, Stenstrom pulled the people out. Some Merians, others fleet crewmen, and there were also a few civilians thrown into the mix here and there. Merchants by the look of them with horrid blackened skin. There were so many to assist. And with that, we conclude Part 3, Chapter 7, Lady Alesta. So, using the power of the road of the Star of Merian, Aram, Tara, and Stenstrom are transported deep under the sea and under the sea floor of Cronin World to what appears to be a Kestrel tank. So a little information here. In the series, the Temple of the Exploding Head, which I have yet to narrate, and I probably won't because I consider that my magnum opus. I got to keep something out there. But anyways, some of the main monsters in the Temple of the Exploding Head were the Kalanju, these horrid, bleeding, dripping, mutilated people who seemed to come from the future. They were always like a person's brother or parents or something like that returned as a monstrous bleeding figure, and they were in the service of the Kestrels, the Kestrel oligarchy, who were some of the main bad guys of the Temple books. And the Kestrel oligarchy were shapeshifters from far into the future, and they could ride the waves of time like mariners in a stormy sea. And one of their favorite tactics was to kidnap people in the future, turn them into horrid Kalanju, and then turn them loose in the past to haunt and terrorize their own family, their own kin. They are created in these places called tanks, and that's where they appear to be, in a Kestrel tank. So the Kestrels would kidnap these people, throw them into these coffin-like containers, and fill it with this very acidic brown liquid and soak them in it for a long period of time, and it would absorb into their skin, and it very painful. It would drive the person in the coffin mad, and when they would finally let them out, they were deranged from all the suffering they'd gone through. They would generally cut themselves out of their own skin. It's pretty gross. It's really gross. And then they would basically go insane and become the Kalanju, become a horrid, evil monster in the service of the Kestrels, and they could do all sorts of things. Their scream would render one immobile. They could paralyze you with their scream. They also could step in and out of thin air, which is one of the highlights of the Kestrels. They could just come and go whenever they pleased. They didn't like their reflection much. If they saw themselves in a mirror, it would sort of break the spell, and they'd become themselves again and see themselves as a monster. That's where all these Kalanju are created, in a tank, and that's where they currently are. And there's lots of tanks stationed all over the leagues that the Kestrels built in secret in their efforts to undermine and take over and destroy the League. There's been quite a few of them. One of them was destroyed in the Temple books by Captain Davidge and Countess Sigillis, and this is another one here underneath Cronin World. And they're so far down that all of Stenstrom's It-Man powers that he gets from Starlight are gone. So he's just himself. He has no enhanced superpowers. He's got nothing. So that's a problem. As they release the Merians and the crew, they see that they were being submerged in this horrible brown fluid. Aram finally meets Alesta and helps her out, and she recovers her wits and begins helping save other people as well. So that's where we leave off. And then next week we will continue part 3, chapter 8, the Kestrel tank. So we will discover more next week. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.